1 Corinthians chapter 6. We made it as far as about verse 10 last week. So verse 11 says this. O Corinthians, 2 Corinthians, by the way, right? 2 Corinthians 6:11. O Corinthians, isn't that a great cry? I love that. We have spoken openly to you. Our hearts are wide open. You are not restricted by us, but you are restricted by your own affections. Now in return for the same, I speak as to children, you also be open. And do not be unequally yoked together with unbelievers. I'm going to stop right there for a minute. Paul, his heart is crying out to this church. And I want you to see Paul's heart, but I want you to understand that that is really God's heart towards this church. It's the way God feels. It's the way God is being led. It's the way God is moving and using Paul to cry out. You know, these are people that Paul had labored with and labored for over 2 years. He'd been in that city. He'd gotten to know them, befriended them, become like a father to them in many ways. And this is Paul's heart cry. But you got to remember, this is a very immoral city. You know, if you were loose morally back in Paul's day, the world would call you Corinthianized. You know, oh, you believe in that. Oh, you're loose that way, or wild that way, or wicked that way. Then you were considered a Corinthian. You know, we come close by calling somebody, you know, oh, you're from Vegas. You know, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. You know, that kind of thing. But it's interesting. You know, here they are. They've got all of these issues. They're suing one another. They're getting drunk at the communion table. They're doing all of these things, you know. I mean, one guy is so sexually immoral, he's sleeping with his stepmom or whatever it is, you know, and you're thinking, man, that's pretty loose. And yet God, when he's talking to Paul, in the book of Acts, he says, Paul, I want you to stay in the city because I have many people in the city. Isn't that funny? He has many people in a wicked city like that. Because God isn't looking for perfect people. God isn't looking for, you know, the people that have everything lined up. He's looking for you. You know, he's looking for me. He's looking for those other people, you know. So after his first letter that's full of corrections, now we get this second letter where he's pouring out his heart to them. And he tells us, man, I have spoken plainly to you. I've told you your good points and your bad points. I've told you all the things that need to change. I've told you all of this stuff. Man, my heart is wide open to you. And he says, but if there's a problem between you and me, it's on your behalf. It's not my behalf. I've been honest, upfront, been outspoken. I've been telling you everything that needs to happen. And if there's a problem, it's on your side. You're not open to me. You're not upfront with me. You're not telling me what's going on and all of that stuff. And you really need to take that and look at it as if God is saying that to you. Is there an issue between you and God? You know where that issue lies? With you. Because he's done everything, right? He's condescended so far to get us, to hold us. He's sent his only begotten Son. He's brought us the gospel. He's given us grace and mercy and peace, you know. And he says, man, if there's a problem, it's with me and my heart and my condition, not with God and his heart and his condition. And he says in verse 13, now in return for the same, I speak to you as children, you also be open. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to open up to us as children. Like I was your dad, like I was your mom, like you know, we had a real relationship here. He says, I've brought you truth, I've brought you emotion, I've brought you heart, and you know, all of this stuff. I'm not just Pastor Paul, you know, I'm not just Pastor Mark. I'm like your dad. I'm like your father. So if anything needs tweaking, changing or fixing, let's talk about it. Let's get it out on the table. Let's make the appropriate responses, Paul wants them to be open. He wants them to have a reciprocative, relationship. And sometimes, do you have that with God? Because sometimes I'll be praying and it's all my side of the issues. Lord, here's this and this and this is going on and I got to fix that and get this. And then I'm like, okay, I'm done, and I walk away. And I never give him a chance to put in his 2 cents worth, And that's the whole reason I was there, wasn't it? He's not just Santa. I'm not just leaving my grocery list there with him. So Paul says this in verse 14. Do not be unequally yoked together with unbelievers. Now in context, you keep this thing in context. In 1 Corinthians chapter 8 and chapter 10, he had warned them about eating things offered to idols, sacrificed to idols. And he had warned them about participating in that process, idol worship or going to one of the ceremonies, He'd spoken about the immorality found in the city, about getting drunk, about suing one another, about all of these issues that had come up. He's already spoken to them about that, because some of those things were very real threats in Corinth. Very easy to get caught up into idol worship. Hey, they're having a big barbecue over at so-and-so. Let's go. Oh, yeah, they do this little ceremony first, and they kill the, whatever, and sprinkle the blood. But then it's all you can eat, And, I know a couple of us would be in line there. All you can eat. It's cheap. Yeah, let's go, But he says, man, don't be unequally yoked with unbelievers. And this is a challenge. This is a call to them, because we deal with that in this area. I don't know if you know that. It's prevalent in this area, right? Paul is calling the church to separation. And it's interesting because we all know what that's like when you raise kids. Hey, don't touch that. Don't touch the stove. It's hot. We start giving do's and don'ts. Don't play in the street. Play on the yard. Don't go near the street because there's these, 4,000-pound things that drive up and down and kill you. And we start doing all of these things, and then it starts to move to, what are you doing hanging out with those kids? Has those words ever come out of your mouth? Why are you going with them? I don't like that. I'm uncomfortable with that. Why don't you hang out with Bobby? Well, Bobby's stupid. He doesn't get in any trouble, and we don't want to hang out with him. There's the thing, right? What are you doing staying out till midnight? How come you didn't call? How come I don't know where you are? You start doing all of that stuff. Why are you messing around with that kind of stuff? Why are you bringing that music home? Why do you smell like cigarette smoke? Because Billy smokes, and I hang out with Billy. Well, it's dumb, Well, and for you as a parent, all of those things, all of those concerns are heartfelt, right? Because you've walked a mile down some of those trails, and the heartache and the pain and the suffering that comes from some of those trails, and you're trying to warn your kids, hey, don't go there, because there's some issues there. But there's always an empty desk at the School of Hard Knocks, isn't there? There's always this opportunity for you to walk up and take a seat right up front in the School of Hard Knocks and learn your own lessons. What a dumb way to do it, but it's always available. I was always first to sign up for that. I probably still sign up for that occasionally. So thinking in that direction, this is from the heart of God, our Father, who loves us as his own kids. And he says, don't get unequally yoked with unbelievers. When you hear that, when somebody says don't or stop, there's some little rascal inside of us that goes, oh yeah, watch this. Have you ever met that guy? Wet paint. Oh, I guess it is, you know? There's something in us that wants to test all of those things, that wants to rebel against all of those things. I can do what I want. I'm practically an adult. Well, if you're just practically an adult, here, let me force you. You are an adult. There you go. Yeah. Sorry, that's just me showing up. Remember, this is not Paul. This is not Mark. This is God speaking to his kids. And we need to look at a couple of things here. Paul is calling the church to separation. And we can run ahead and say, well, it's all just a list of do's and don'ts. Don't smoke and don't drink and don't party and don't stay out late and don't sleep with your girlfriend. And, you go through all of this list and it's just a bunch of do's and don'ts. And I hate rules, You could do that. We try to make separation a bunch of do's and don'ts. Well, let me tell you, you want to know who I am. Let me tell you what I don't do. I don't smoke and I don't drink and I don't hang out with girls who do. And, I don't do all of those things. But you don't know anything about me by what I don't do. You only know about me by what I do. All the way through the Bible, we find this call to separation. Remember in the garden? God says, hey, of the garden, of all the trees in the garden, you may freely eat. You just have at it. Acres and acres and acres of garden out here with thousands of trees. You just partake of all of them, except that one. There's just one little tree. I'd appreciate it if you didn't take a hold of that one. And can you imagine, by the end of the first day, they're both sitting around, wonder what's different about this tree. Wonder why it's no on this tree. Because that's us, right? That's kind of that nature we have. Remember when Elijah challenged the people? If Baal is God, serve him. But if the Lord is God, then serve him. There's choices. There's separation. Because choice is separation. I chose Brenda. That means all the other women are separated. No, I'm separated to her. She's separated to me. Tough luck, everybody else. Well, tough luck. It's really, you see what you're giving up, don't you? Whew, Israel's very first song in their songbook. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the path of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on it he meditates day and night, right? What's the call? Oh, if you want to be blessed, this is who you are. If you don't want to be blessed, ignore that, right? Ignore it. What's it a call to? Separation. Amos. How can two walk together unless they're in agreement, right? Perfect sense. What's it a call to? How can you say you're in agreement with God unless you're walking with him? So here's the picture. It's not a matter of, I have to give up all of this stuff to love God. I have to go through all of these procedures and all of this thing. That is not it. It's a picture of being in love. What's God's first and greatest commandment? You should love the Lord your God with all your heart, might, mind, and strength, right? You should love him. Anybody in here ever been in love? Nobody, huh? Wow. I'm apparently the only one. This may be harder to communicate than I thought, so hang on with me. Do you remember being in love? Some of you guys have to look way back, right? Because, man, I've been married for years, and, things change. Do you remember? It was like your other friends ceased to exist, right? Because you were doing whatever you could to spend time with her, or with him, or whatever it was, I have heard about girls that, like, they're going on a date, and all day long, they're primping their hair. They're doing their little lashes and putting on the face paint. Michelangelo has nothing on some of these girls, man. They're good. And every dress in the closet, every piece of clothing in the closet's laying on the bed because they've tried it on, put it on, tried it with this, tried it with that, And hours they spent just doing that weird thing. Yeah, I've heard of guys who going on the date. They actually go in and ask Dad, can I borrow $50? $50? What's going on? This is a new girl. She's really cute. I think she's the one. You're gutsy enough to ask Dad for money. Something's going on, And that same boy will take a shower. Wait a minute. It's serious now, right? And they will wash the car. Every time my boy would wash the car, and there was trouble. Car's washed. You see that? Boy's washing the car. Oh, boy. Gonna get a call tonight. Here we go, Some of those boys will actually put on deodorant and some kind of smell 'em stuff. Usually they don't have to go steal it from Dad anymore, but I used to have to go steal Dad's Aqua Velva or whatever it was, Do you see the picture? See all the things they're willing to do and the things they're willing to give up, because why? They're in love. It's not a burden. Manny, I think about Manny. Do you know what a burden it is to be married to that woman he loves? I was just thinking about the garlic thing. Think about the garlic thing. Manny can't bring garlic into his house. How many of you guys would die? I mean, right off it's like, are you kidding me? It's garlic or her. Well, it's garlic, I'm going to be like them guys coming out of Egypt. Oh, the garlic and leeks and, Think about poor little me. My wife's favorite food, Mexican food. My least favorite food on planet Earth, Mexican food. And yet we go out to eat Mexican food quite often. Oh, it's such a sacrifice for me. No, I love the girl. If I'm going to keep the girl, I'm going to do whatever the girl wants me to do, kind of thing. Even just a couple days ago, she wanted to go out to have Indian food. Indian food and Mexican food are very nearly. I'm not sure where to place them. They're right there. Real food is up there somewhere. And they're down here fighting, We went, and I found food to eat. And it put a smile on her face. And I was happy about that. You see, when you love someone, it's not burdensome. It comes with the dirt. Hey, that's just what I do. Because I want to put a smile on their face. I want to make them happy. You see those guys and they're dating and their regular friends come by. Hey, is Billy here? Billy's gone. Where is he? Hanging out with that girl. I knew it. And then his friends are talking back and forth. Have you seen Billy all month? No, haven't seen him all month. Well, it's that, what's her name? Oh, yeah, totally forgot. It's what's her name? Well, they're lost now. They're out there. They're doing whatever. It's over. They're in that stage. But, when Jesus looks at you, he still calls you the bride of Christ. Not the wife of Christ. Interesting. The bride of Christ. Because there's still some fire there. There's still some passion there. Because sometimes after you become the wife, you wives know what I'm talking about. You mothers know what I'm talking about. So here Paul says, in the role of father with you guys, You're telling your kids, don't get yourself unequally yoked with some unbeliever. Unequally yoked is one word in the Greek, and it's heteros zygos. It's interesting. Zygos, we get birth. We get something that gave birth to. And heteros means of a different kind. So it's don't give birth to, don't get married to, don't get yourself in some covenant with a different kind. You know, the Jews would rapidly pick this up because in Deuteronomy it says, hey, you should not be yoked, you shouldn't yoke two different kinds of animals together. You shouldn't yoke an ox and a jackass together. And it's always interesting because all the way through the Bible, an ox is a picture of a Christian and a jackass isn't. A donkey isn't. It's interesting because you try to put two different types, two different natures of animals together and get them to do something. So the ox, you strap him in there to the yoke and he wants to plow. This is his job. This is what he does. He just wants to pull, you know. What's the donkey doing? Pull over here, you know. And then you get him, and you know the ox is huge and big, and the donkey's not that big, and the yoke, it's chafing and wearing and causing sores and bleeding, and it's just not a pretty picture. One of the primary things, you ever think about this? Jesus' father, Joseph, was called a carpenter, and in the Greek, he's a master carpenter, and one of the primary things a master carpenter did was make yokes. And he custom formed these yokes so they wouldn't chafe. So they were fit for the specific animals. Even with two oxen, they're the same nature, but they're different sizes, different shapes. One's taller, one's bigger, one's wider, one's more powerful. You know, you got all of these things going on. So even if you get two believers in the same yoke, there can still be some differences, some issues. You guys who are married to another Christian, you understand. There's still some things that rub me the wrong way. But if you strap a believer and an unbeliever together, oh, mercy. There's blood, you know. There is big sores. There is real problems. You know, in 1 Peter 1, verse 4, it says that we are partakers of the divine nature now. We're not just humans. We're not just people walking around on this planet. We have a totally different nature now. And he says, therefore, don't strap yourself with someone of the old nature, someone without that new nature. Christ is in you. You're not the same anymore. Well, you know, we're both still Idaho kids. We grew up in the same school district. We basically hang out together. Well, that's fine. Are they born again? That's fine. Do they have a divine nature like you? Because if not, there are going to be major problems when you yoke yourself together with them. Now, this applies to mostly marriage and business. Mostly. If you decide, hey, I'm going to get married to someone of another nature, to an unbeliever, good luck with that. Good luck with that thought. Because, man, there's going to be some chafing and some wounds and some hardship. I'm going to get into business with somebody else. Dumb idea. Dumb idea, because they've got a different perspective, a different outlook, a different destination than you have. Now, this isn't telling you, hey, if you're married to an unbeliever, run home and get divorced. It doesn't say that. No. 1 Corinthians chapter 7 dealt with that. It says, man, if the unbeliever is pleased to be with you, stay right there. Work it out. If you're in business, it doesn't say go home and break up the business. No. If the unbeliever is pleased to be in that relationship with you, then stay there. Because a lot of us got into these things before we became Christians. I married my wife before I was a Christian. I married her probably before she was a Christian. I don't know. We didn't know anything about that time, Met on First Street and we looked googly-eyed at each other and it was over. And I became that guy that actually used deodorant and took a shower once in a while. I don't know what it was. But he is telling us that if you are here today and single, don't go fishing for a bride in the wrong pond. That's what he's telling you. Are you fishing? Because it's interesting. You're not supposed to be hunting for a husband or wife, period. It's not like hunting. You're out there, you get your scope on, you're scoping everybody out. It's that one. And you bag that one and bring it home. That's not how it's supposed to work. You're supposed to allow God to bring that one to you. And in the meantime, while he's bringing that one to you, you're supposed to be becoming the one they can't live without. Right? So it's never changing the other person. It's always changing you. It's always, I need to become what they can't live without. I'm terrible about that, by the way. And can I remind you that this isn't me speaking. This is God, your Father, speaking to you as a loving, caring Father. I have dealt with many, 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 many young people who have decided that this doesn't really apply to them. Well, Joe and I have been friends our whole lives, and we've always gotten along, and everything worked out, and, well, he belongs to this religion, but they're not really practicing right now, and so everything is cool, everything is great. Oh, sure it is, right now. And that's all you can see is right now. Because in 2 years, after you have a baby, and the whole family gets together and goes, hey, we want you to bring your baby over and get it blessed here, and your husband goes, yeah, that's probably a good idea, and you're going, no, we don't want to do that. Oh, chafing starts, right? Oh, there are all kinds of things going on that you didn't think about, when you were in love, when you were dating, when you were going through stuff. I have seen, and I have been there for the marriages and for the divorces over and over and over and over again, because people don't think this section applies to them. And sadly, this is your loving Father giving you advice, saying, please don't do that. Please don't get in line for years of heartache, for years of torture and divorce and kids and nightmares and all of that stuff that comes along with it. If you would simply listen to the Lord. Blessed are those who walk in whose counsel? Oh yeah, not the ungodly's counsel, but God's counsel. So what he's saying is no missionary dating. I think I can win this guy to Christ. He's kind of open to the things of Jesus. I've talked to him about some of that stuff. Well, good for you. But until he's a believer and until God tells you that's the one, the answer's no. There is no joining up for the evangelical dating of an unbeliever for Christ organization. I know some of you guys card-carrying members. It's okay. It's not praying. It's not hunting. It's not seeking. It's asking God, prepare somebody for me and bring them to me. And prepare me for that somebody. And walking on through life, You make the wrong choice here, and the chafing begins. I know nobody's here has ever gone through chafing, One wants to go to church and serve God and give tithe and, just be a good old Christian, and the other one's going, we don't have any money for that. I wanted you to hang out with me today. I'm going to be up on the hill, or we're going to go fishing, we're going to go whatever. And there's this clash of what? Two natures going to go on. I want to have our kid blessed. That's a waste of time. I don't want to get all gussied up, some suit and tie, and have to go listen to some boring guy for a couple hours, you know? I mean, I've never heard that myself. I just grew up in a family that my mother was active in a religion, my dad was nothing. And I watched that battle my whole life, you know? Now, Jesus was master about this. It was constantly said of Jesus, that guy does nothing but hang out with tax collectors and sinners. And yet he hang out with them all the time, but nobody ever accused him of sin. So he was a master of contact without contamination, right? This is the relationship we have with the world. We're in contact with them. We love these people. And we're trying to win them to Christ. And the only way to do that is rub shoulders with them, hang out with them. But we can't find our fellowship with them. It can't be who we are closest friends with, who are best buddies with, who we choose to marry or get into business with. There has to be contact, but without contamination. Our contact is for one reason. I want to win them to Christ. I want to share Jesus with them. I want them to see the love of God. So in verse 14, well, he says like this, do not be unequally yoked together with unbelievers, for what fellowship has righteousness with lawlessness? He's going to ask this 5 times. For what, and he's going to insert a word. What fellowship? Fellowship means participation. What participation has righteousness, a Christian living and treating other people right in this world? What fellowship does that have with lawlessness? All you got to do is find a couple that disagree about something like evolution. One person believes in creationism, one person believes in evolution. And man, there is no getting together on those two subjects. Well, I'm with science. Well, so am I. If you just look at science, you know. But you don't. You skip over science and you look at all of these guys that say they're quoting science and they really aren't, you know. Or you really believe in creationism. You're an idiot, you know. Sex outside of marriage. One person's yes, one person's no. Well, how are you ever going to know if you're a fit unless you try it out? I've heard that so many times. You got to be just crazy. You are so old-fashioned. You're like Victorian, you know, in your thinking. Well, yeah, probably farther back than that, you know. Marriage is only between a man and a woman. You're an idiot. You see, there are 2 different sets of laws that govern the 2 different natures. And when you try to mix those laws, they don't mix. They're like oil and water. Even when you shake them up, they just separate again, you know. Next, it says, what communion, and that's the word koinonia. It means to have all things in common. So what in common does light have with darkness? That's great, right? You go home tonight. Tonight, when it's all dark in your house, you walk in, it's dark. You flip on the light switch. What communion has light with darkness? No, you turn on the light, darkness must flee. There is no communion between light and darkness. I know you're looking at shadows. You're looking at little dark spots, but you know what? There's light in that dark spot. It's not dark. It's light. Various shades of light, but you know, those two are incompatible because you remember what God did at creation? He separated the light from the darkness. They can't come back together? They can't coexist? Verse 15, what accord has Christ with Baal? Now, Baal is a synonym for Satan. So what accord, the word in the Greek is symphony. We get our word symphony from it. What harmony, what musical harmony is between Christ and Satan? Those are two different sheets of music, are they not? There's no resonating together between those two. They are opposite ends, opposite spectrums. This is why you cannot be unequally yoked. All of these pictures. What part, and part is a district, an inheritance, it's a portion. So what portion has a believer with an unbeliever? I like the King James. What portion has a believer with an infidel? You guys are familiar with that word, right? Because you've been called that word publicly in this day and age. Infidel! You know all that means, right? Someone that doesn't have the same belief as the other one. I gladly hold that title. I am an infidel to a lot of people because I do not hold their beliefs. I have my own. But here's the thing. He says, what portion has and the word in the Greek is pistos, believer, with a apistos, an unbeliever. Now it's the same word, pistos, but when you place an A in front of it, it totally changes its meaning. And you guys are familiar with that. You have a theist, right? A theist, someone who believes in God, and then you have an atheist, someone who does not believe in God. All they did was put an A in front of it. You have someone who muses, sits around and engages their mind. To think is to muse. And then you have places called amusement parks. Amusement, which is not to think. Isn't that interesting? You go to Disneyland not to think. You go to Disneyland to shut this thing off. You go to a movie to shut this thing off. You go to get amused, you're turning your thinking off, which is scary because now they're training you while you're not thinking, which is, crazy stuff. Verse 16, what agreement, what mutual understanding does the temple of God have with idols? Every Jew would immediately go, there is only one temple of God. And we know exactly where it is. And in this day, it was still there. It was still on Mount Moriah in Israel. It was right there. And they knew, you can go offer sacrifices on all the high places and all these other things that they call temples and all this other stuff, but all of that is pagan. All of that is worthless. There's only one place. So what agreement has that place with idols? None. There is no agreement there, That temple was distinct. That temple was separate from every other thing that called itself a temple ever on planet Earth. Do you realize that? That's our picture here, right? Because we're to be separate. We're to be distinct. We're to be set apart for one purpose or for one person, and that's it. Verse 16, for you are the temple of the living God, as God has said, I will dwell in them, I will walk with them, I will be their God, and they shall be my people. For you are, and this is all in the plural, for you all are, if we were from the South, I could get somebody to really say this, right? Because you know them people. Y'all. You all are the temple of the living God. Why? Because Christ has moved inside of you, right? His Holy Spirit is now in you. He's dwelling in you. And you're not just the temple, just the outside building. You're not that. You're the Holy of Holies. You're the Naos. because you are where God's presence is. So it's not on some hill, some far, over in Jerusalem anymore. It's you. Christ has taken up residence. In Titus chapter 2, it says, "For the grace of God that brings salvation has appeared to all men, teaching us that denying ungodly and worldly lusts, we should live soberly and righteously and godly in this present age, looking forward to the blessed hope and the glorious appearing of our great God and Savior, Jesus Christ." Grace, here's the thing about grace, it's past, present, and future. In the past, he brought us to salvation. In the present, he's teaching us that denying ungodly lusts and all of these things. And then in the future, looking forward to heaven, looking forward to being with him, the glorious appearing of him, So God is dwelling in us now. The church, the ecclesia, the called out ones. You ever get that? You're the called out ones. Called out from what? The world. You're separated from the world. Just the idea of church. It's not these four walls, right? You guys all know that, right? It's not this building. It's not going to be the new building, even though it's a real church. I keep telling everybody, we're getting a real church, But, when you guys aren't here, it's just a building. It's just doors and windows and weird stuff, carpet and stuff. You're the church. We're called out. We're called out of things that used to drive us, that used to own us. We're called out from all of those old things. We're called out from death, from lie, from destruction, and we're given life. So he says, because of that, I will dwell in them and walk among them. I will be their God, and they shall be my people. Therefore, if you know there's a therefore, you got to know what the therefore is there for. Come out from among them and be separate, says the Lord. Do not touch what is unclean, and I will receive you. I will be a father to you, and you shall be my sons and daughters, says the Lord Almighty. This is the second exhortation. He says, therefore, God says this to us, come out from among them. You're the called out ones. Come out. I've called you. No, just come, right? And be separate. Because I don't want to see you guys all tied up in the wrong things, with the wrong company, with all of these things that will destroy you. He says, come out and I will receive you. That's full of meaning. It literally means I will receive you kindly. I will treat you with favor and graciousness. That's our call. Just make an approach. Just come towards me and I will do all of these things. And this is from the heart of God. He's looking at you and he's saying, just come. Come to me. Come over here. Remember, Paul is speaking to these Corinthian guys who are all messed up. They're clear full of junk. They got all kinds of stupid stuff going on. They're messed up beyond our reason, right? He isn't saying this to super Christians. I got all my ducks in a row and me and God are just right. I don't know anybody like that. I know people that have their ducks all over the place and them and God are right because God makes it right. You ever thought that in your mind? But God, I am so messed up. I don't know if I'm ever going to get this thing all straightened out, get all my stuff in a row. And God, he should just smile at you at times like that and go, I know, Mark. I know you, remember? I know you're totally messed up. But I got this. I got this. Come to me and I'll receive you, just like you are. Come to me and I'll straighten that out. Come to me and I'll treat you kindly. And I will be a father to you. And you will be my sons and daughters. Notice who's talking. Says the Lord, all capitals, capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D. That's the highest name in the Bible. It's the name of Jesus. That is, Yahweh, Jehovah, Elohim. It's all of that. And then there was no chapter break. 17:1 says this, therefore, having these promises. Therefore, did you notice the tenses? Therefore, having these promises. Already, past tense. You already have them. The one who needs to come out to be separate already has the promises. God's already approached them. God's already calling them. God's already at work in them. No, you don't deserve it. No, you've never earned it. No. But God in His grace is beckoning you to Him. Therefore, having these promises, dearly beloved, let us cleanse ourselves from all the filthiness of the flesh and of the spirit, perfecting holiness in the Spirit of God. Dearly beloved. That's God's perspective of you. Let us cleanse ourselves. I thought God was the one who did the cleansing. It takes His blood and it takes it. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But He's asking for your participation here. He's asking for you to help Him out. I like that. Because we're going to find out this is an ongoing process. Cleanse yourselves from all filthiness of the flesh and of the spirit. You think about David, and he cries out to God, let the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, God. The words of my mouth, my work of my flesh, and the meditations of my heart, the spirit, let them be lined up. Let them be right before you. David knew they were both necessary, right? I got to not only clean up my physical part, I got to clean up my spiritual part, because there are times in me where I can control the outside. The outside wants to kill, but I've got it under control. It's not going to kill. But inside, do you ever have that tape recorder going inside? I'm going to kill this guy. You know, you're all worked up. Oh, no, they both need to line up. They both need to submit to the Lord. Perfecting holiness. Perfecting speaks of an ongoing process to bring something to completion. We are currently in that process as Christians. Holiness is separateness. You know how I know that? Because God is holy. You just look at Him. So there's God, and then there's everything else, right? There is that which is God, and then there is that which is anything else. So God is separate, right? God isn't His creation, but He created everything else. Nothing is like Him. He is separate. God doesn't want just to be a father. God wants to be your father. I love that idea because it's very personal. He doesn't want you to get involved and tied up in all kinds of stuff that is going to mess you up, cause you years of heartache and grief and questioning. Where was God when I did that? He was right there knocking on your heart saying, don't go do that. And you said, oh, don't worry about that. I got this one, God. And that's when I always get in trouble, you know. He is asking us to separate ourselves. And in the Bible, separation is never from, it's always to. We're going to be in this world. We can't be separate from this world. The only way for us to be separate from this world is to leave this world, right? So you're going to be in this world, but He says, be separated unto me. My wife's big spoon. Big fork. Sorry. Wow. Almost blew the story. My wife has this big fork, and it's hers. And we lost it for years, and I was happy. And then it showed back up somehow miraculously. And every once in a while, I'll reach in there, not thinking, I'll grab the big fork, start eating, And my wife will walk by, what are you doing? And I'm like, eating food. What do you got in your hand? Oh no. It's the big fork. The big fork is separated. Some of you guys are laughing, but some of you guys have a coffee cup. And that is my cup. Don't you touch my cup. Don't you dare wash that thing. All that black stuff in there just adds flavor and goodness. Yeah, it does. Add flavor. I don't know about the goodness part, you know. Speaking of that, my wife has an addiction problem. I'd like you to pray for her. She used up the last of her coffee beans out of a bag the other day, and she poured them in the grinder, and then she took the bag and she went, and she actually shuddered, you know, when she did that. And so she needs prayer. She told me, you do the same thing to chip bags. I'm sorry. God wants you to be separated to him, not from stuff, but to him. Love is the perfect picture of that. You're separated unto someone. You just neglect all those other things. You're not constantly about all those other things. You're about this one purpose, this one person. You're his holy of holies. He says, I'm going to be walking with you. I'm going to be living with you now. And it's so nice when you don't do this and when you don't do that, when you don't get tied up in all of this other stuff. God is not withholding from you. He sent his only begotten Son to have you, to gain you, to draw you. He gives you forgiveness. He gives you salvation. He gives you an inheritance undefiled, does not fade away. But remember, the point of this lesson is if there's an issue between you and God, the issue's in your lap. It's in your heart. It's sitting in the chair you're sitting in. That's where the issue between you and God is. And if there's one, statement that Paul would make is he says, man, open up your heart to me. That's God's cry to you. Just open up your heart and let's get this worked out and let's walk on.